Divorce lawyers of Reddit, what is the most insane, evil, funny, or dumb way a spouse has tried to screw the other? Part 1. IANAL, but work in the court system. Once, a case that came in was a couple divorcing on mutual terms. The husband had one child with her, and the wife had a child from the previous marriage. He agreed to pay child support for both children. I guess he really cared about this other, enough to support her, even though it isn't his obligation. Judge signs the order, they go to set up the child support account, and it gets kicked back, saying you can't have two accounts for one child. Turns out she's been collecting child support from the biological father the entire time and never told him. She basically tried to milk two fathers for one child, and the other attorney knew about it. Here in Canada, a kid can legally have up to 4 individuals responsible for paying his or her child support. There was a court case a few years ago where a lady tried to change that law and have the number upped to 5. Not my case, but during my first year of law school, lawyers from different practices came to give us a peek behind the curtain of different areas. The divorce lawyer told the story of a rather well-to-do couple that spent months and months and many tens of thousands of dollars fighting over absolutely everything, all the way down to a single ceramic ashtray. He couldn't remember the significance, but somehow it had come through the husband's family. Even after everything else had been decided, they spent many more months and nearly $100,000 fighting over just this ashtray. Then, after a court hearing, the wife finally won the ashtray. She promptly strode out to the white courthouse steps and smashed the ceramic ashtray, left the pieces all over for the husband to see on his way out. Decided that day I would not be a divorce lawyer. Spent $100,000 to win an ashtray, only to smash it in spite. I think you made a good decision after reading all these answers. I didn't handle the divorce, I handled parts of the aftermath. In the divorce, she went AWOL, was living in a truck somewhere, and just couldn't handle it mentally. He gave her 5 of his 9 companies. They were the ones that owed 7 figures in payroll taxes. He had made her the bookkeeper on paper. She spent decades trying to shake the IRS for the results. Is there a way to say, no, I don't want this? Or is it just that she didn't know about the debt? I would imagine she didn't know, and that her lawyer didn't know the right questions to ask. I'm a lawyer, but have had a very limited amount of experience in divorce cases. The first case I ever worked, the husband shaved, waxed every single hair off his body in an attempt to avoid a court-mandated drug test. We had a guy at work do this, shaved his whole body, razor burn on the back of his neck, cut up his elbows. He was a hairy dude. Then he failed the urine test. I asked him why he went to all that trouble, and he said, I don't know, I was high. TIL. When you're about to go through a divorce, don't clean out the accounts and hide the money. Grab your pets and put them in a safe place where nobody will ever find them until the divorce is all long over. I tried to do this, but my STB ex called the cops on me. I explained how abusive he was. Picture a sobbing, sleep-deprived woman covered in bruises and a broken leg in a cheap hotel lobby trying to explain to the cops that her husband tried to kill her the night before. But the cops told me that because I left and took the dogs with me without telling him, fled in the middle of the night, that I was in the wrong. And even if I wanted to argue to keep the dogs would have to stay with him until a judge decided. Cops took my dogs back to him. All happened within 4 hours of my leaving. I never saw my dogs again. Not my divorce, but my divorce lawyer told me about a case she was involved in where both clients were so petty that they had to all meet to argue over literally every single scrap of everything. The final object that neither would settle on was a ceramic rabbit statue, a really generic one from Home Depot or whatever. 0 sentimental value, but since it was the final item, neither side wanted to lose the last thing, and they dragged it out over 3 separate meetings for this one thing. I don't remember which ended up getting it, but once they settled it and signed everything, the winning party stuck it on their lawyer's desk as a gift and walked out. They must have felt so cool, yet looked so stupid. I wonder at what point even the lawyers are like, this is not worth my time despite what I'm getting paid. Just accidentally drop that thing so it breaks. Friend was going through divorce from an insane husband. He had been texting her pics of the gun he bought and threatening her. Police were called. Nothing they could do because it was only a picture. He was staying with a secret girlfriend at this point. She allowed him to go get his stuff from the house. She was scared to go back in the house alone. I went with her. First red flag was he had changed the locks. So we waited for the locksmith to open the house and change the locks again. Well, when the door opens, we noticed all of the furniture was gone. So we carefully went upstairs in search of her cats. The entire second floor was empty. No cats. No furniture. Even her clothes were gone. Come to find out, he had hired a moving company to pack and take everything, even the food in the fridge. Finally found the cats. He had taken them to another vet in town and put them up for boarding under his sister's name, thinking she would not be able to find them. He was finally forced to disclose what happened to her possessions. He had them taken to a storage unit far away from the home. Can't believe I'm saying this, but relative to the amount of animal abuse in the rest of this thread, I'm glad he didn't try to kill the cats. Divorce lawyer here. The spouse had been out of the house for weeks. She waited until he was on a business trip, came into the house, turned on all the faucets, plugged the drains, turned off the furnace, and left. It was minus 10 degrees. He came back 5 days later. The house was ruined. The water froze and cracked the foundation. I'm guessing no insurance? Or insurance didn't cover a deliberate act of damage or something. Had a client whose wife wanted him out of the house. I told him not to leave, just move to a different bedroom for the time being, because once he was out, the chances of him ever getting back in were slim. He texted his wife and told her he was staying in the house. She called back and left a voicemail that she wanted him out, and if he wasn't out soon, she would start taking out her unhappiness on the children, and would remind the children that mommy was being mean to them because daddy wouldn't leave. One-on-one on how to lose custody. You bet I played it for the mediator and judge. I don't practice divorce law, but I did an internship with a family law judge in law school that involved me sitting in on a lot of stuff. One divorced couple came in because the ex-husband wanted to lower his spousal support payments due to his lowered income, great financial responsibilities, and the fact that his ex-wife was declining to seek paid employment, all of which sounds reasonable on the face. It turned out that while his income had been lowered due to cuts, his new wife, who technically worked as his assistant and had done so prior to the divorce, was now making quadruple her salary, more than he ever had. He claimed that his ex-wife had unpaid renters living with her and could have money to survive if she charged them rent. It turned out they were the couple's shared 18-year-old twins who were living at home, having just graduated high school, and were going to keep living at home while starting college in the fall. It also turned out later that he allowed his stepdaughter and her 2 children to live with him and his wife rent-free and paid for her college. His ex-wife produced evidence that he told his own kids to figure out paying for college themselves. He claimed that his ex-wife worked as a nanny for free by choice and should be getting paid for work elsewhere. The kids she watched for free were their 3 joint grandchildren from their eldest child, 2 of which were severely disabled. He claimed that when he married his new wife, he gained over 15 new dependents, which was technically true, but those dependents were all in Mexico and included his new wife's grown siblings and their families, none of whom he had ever met. This dude was shocked when spousal support wasn't decreased. He's trying to bleed his ex-wife dry, not realizing he's being bled dry by the new one, lol. He was using the new wife and her Mexican family to claim expenses he probably wasn't making, to not pay the ex-wife her spousal support. I bet the new wife's salary was also mostly coming back to him. My dad is a divorce attorney. His clients couldn't decide who would get the Labrador puppies from a new litter they just bred. The pups are worth $1,000 a pop. Well, they also hadn't been up to date on their payments. So Dad brought a litter of 8 floppy puppies home as collateral for us to have until they could negotiate the settlement. So much fun for us kids. Client: I'm a little short on money right now. Maybe there's some other way I can pay you? Slides puppy across desk and raises eyebrows. Articled at a family law firm, thankfully moved on since. Worst I saw was a decades-long case. Husband had been in a motorcycle accident, suffered brain damage, has severely limited capacity going forward, got a huge settlement afterwards. Wife spent the next several years stealing the entirety of the guy's money and property variously by forging his signature or putting documents in front of him that he couldn't understand and telling him there was something benign so he'd sign it. She then forged a bunch of letters from a tax authority and convinced him he was about to go to jail and further convinced him to flee the country. He finally came back several years later to find out everything he owned was in her name, and one of the documents he was told to sign were divorce papers. Dude got left with nothing. I moved on before I found out how the story ended. Hopefully it ends with her dying a slow, painful death. Paralegal for divorce lawyer. This one is morbid. We represented a guy who believed vehemently that his wife was assaulting the children. The authorities were involved, child services was involved. It was never clear what the truth was or if anything at all was going on, but our client was sure. He shot his wife dead at a custody exchange in front of the children. He then sat down and waited for the authorities. We visited him in jail with his criminal defense attorney. As we were leaving, he told me, "Well, I guess the divorce is over now," and he laughed. This was the first time I'd ever been speechless.